Alright, so we are back. In today's video, I didn't want to have to make, but it seems like it's becoming more realistic. Jake Paul versus KSI is probably not going to happen. Yet. Okay, let me explain. A month ago, I thought KSI and Jake was signed, sealed, delivered. We had everything ready to go. But as of recently, and especially after the Tommy Fury fight, things have become like every single millennial and Gen Z relationship where they still kind of want to be around each other, but things are complicated. Because as of the last couple of weeks, both have said the other is ducking the fight, and both have good points, but no one's really talking about why each other is ducking. So it's now become my job to sort out what the truth is between both parties, because they both do say each other is ducking the fight. And when I sift through this storm, like my comment section or my Twitter replies, I think I can find the actual truth as to what's really going on here. There's been some interesting sources and statements from those sources from both sides of the camp that I have to address, because quite frankly, it's like I've been watching a tennis match for 5 or 6 hours. I'm getting tired of the back and forth. So like I said, what's really going on with KSI and Jake Paul? Who's telling the truth? Who's lying? And why? I don't think we're getting this fight. At least not yet. And I hate to say it, guys, but I'm dead honest when I say this. Maybe not ever. So let's talk about it. The breakdown, let's go. Why have I become so pessimistic on KSI versus Jake just a month after I told you guys on camera that this fight was signed, sealed, delivered? Because at the time, it was. At the time, there was no issues with what was happening. Now, we'd heard from both sides that the fight was being negotiated. They had a date, December 16th, the location, Cardiff, here close to where I am in Wales. That's right, I'm on my last week as a shepherd, and you might as well bah at me right now because I'm the GOAT with this shit. But since that time, things have changed a little. One side of the story is from KSI and his team. KSI and Mams Taylor were on a Twitter space as recently as last night saying this about the reason the Jake Paul fight isn't happening now, and maybe not at all.
He said that you weren't signing the contract and that is all on you.
Hold on. That's bullshit because Jake has the contract. It's not in our hands. We redlined it, sent it back to him. He redlined it, sent it back to us. We redlined it, sent it back to him, and now the ball's in his court. But I did get a call from Jake's team saying, hey, Jake's not going to fight KSI in the summer. Like we wanted. Basically, he doesn't want to fight KSI. He wants to fight other people. So all that stuff about him saying I'll fight him tomorrow, if you know, and all that stuff. Well, you know, we booked Wembley Stadium. We were ready, and he's the one who backed out.
Now, I have some theories about this, and I think there's some truth to what Mams Taylor is saying there, but it is veiled with a thin line of narrative spin that, of course, if you are Mams Taylor and KSI, you're going to do, but I can almost guarantee you that JJ nor Jake are scared of the other one. I think we're past the point of who's scared of who. This is not that. I'm going to tell you why. You heard Mams and JJ say that they had sent 2 contracts over to Jake as recently as 2 weeks ago, and from those contracts, it was more so getting stuff like dates set, where I think Mams Taylor said he had secured Wembley Stadium, and unfortunately that didn't go down. He had secured a date in September, and that wasn't gonna work for Jake in that point. And he said that Jake's team had come back to him and said he's not looking to fight KSI right now. And those are the specific words I want you guys to hold on to right now. This is where I say the narrative flip comes in from KSI and their team, because yes, it is true that KSI and Jake are not going to fight right now. That even that Jake doesn't want to fight KSI right now. That is the truth. But the reason behind it isn't because Jake is scared and or ducking, just like KSI was not scared and or ducking Jake multiple times when Jake said he would step in August to fight JJ on a week's notice, and JJ said no. It wasn't because he was scared, it was because it was a timing issue. He wasn't prepared for Jake. He was coming off a 3-year layoff. It was a timing issue, and that was not the plan. So to expect JJ to just drop everything and say, sure, Jake, come and fight me, whatever. And that's the thing that we have a similar situation for with Jake, the plan. Although and I'm sure you guys at home think Jake's next opponent probably should be KSI, especially for the build of the fight, the magnitude in which it makes sense to do it is right now. I agree with Mams Taylor there. If Jake loses another fight, the shine of this fight starts to fade away like mine does after 3 hours in this light trying to record a video because there's new news coming out every single second and I finally get to go wash my face. So I agree with that, but it's not a part of Jake's plan. This is the problem with dealing with egos and superstars of the level of KSI and Jake. They have their own separate plans, and it seems more like Jake's plan doesn't necessarily have to do with KSI as much as KSI's plan has to do with Jake. We know from that same Impulsive podcast that Jake wants the rematch with Tommy as soon as possible. He wants to go and get that one back. And I don't blame him for it. As a competitor, he should want to do that. Does it mean the result will change? I don't think so, at least not right now, unless there are major changes from Jake going into that rematch. Technically, skill-wise, he has to get better. Approach and game plan, all that stuff, I wouldn't say has to change drastically, but something does have to change. It doesn't mean that Jake is scared of going and fighting KSI. In fact, that fight in December can still happen, but what I think is happening is KSI and Mams Taylor putting the same pressure on Jake that Jake put on JJ for years. After JJ left the scene and Jake said, he'll never fight me, he doesn't want to fight me. I tried to fight him in August for free, he wasn't going to do it, although I don't think Jake was going to do that for free either. It is exactly what I said a second ago. Guys are just flipping spots. Now JJ is the one pushing for the Jake fight and saying that Jake wants no part of him, but also knowing that he is vulnerable after a Tommy loss and that he wants to rematch Tommy. It is a very opportune time to start pushing for that fight. And again, I don't blame them for that. If you're Mams Taylor, if you're JJ, you absolutely push for the Jake fight right now because the potential of it does hang in the balance a bit. But it's pretty simple from Jake's side. He wants to get his rematch and potentially even fight Floyd Mayweather, which is a rumor I'm hearing, and now Vegas even has odds on that fight happening as early as this year. And we heard from Jake in the Impulsive podcast, he does not think that the KSI fight sells like a Tommy Fury rematch and a Floyd Mayweather fight. And I don't know that I can disagree with him right now. I don't, because they pulled some legitimately crazy numbers. And while I used to be on the train that Jake and KSI did similar numbers, I don't know that that's the case anymore. In fact, with the right build, they absolutely could, but I do think it takes a little bit of time to get people back on board with the influencer beef between the two, because Jake has kind of left it behind and KSI has been focused on other things. Something else that also has to be factored into these entire talks about Jake and KSI is the location of the fight. Because again, while KSI and Mams are telling the truth that Jake has not accepted the two offers they sent over, those two offers have been in the UK and sanctioned by the PBA, which I'm not going to say is the reason, but I do have a hunch that it is partially involved as to why Jake is a bit hesitant to sign on to something in the UK, because as of right now, Misfits Boxing is not regulated by the British Boxing Board of Control. They are instead delegated from the BBBofC to the PBA, yes, the Pro Boxing Association of the UK, that we've all had issues with in their scoring policies, from the Kenny and Temper fight to the Kenny and Sensei fight to the Nick LMAO and Jay Swingler fight. It does seem like they get in their own way a little more than they're helpful, and from what I've heard from Jake, he does not want to fight KSI in an exhibition. He wants this to be a pro-sanctioned bout. And even as recently as last week, you started to hear the BBBofC start to take notice of Misfits Boxing, and potentially with the words and verbiage being used in the article you're going to see on screen, they might step in and start regulating this themselves, which would in effect make most fighters on Misfits apply for a pro card in the UK. I'm going to tell you right now, there's not many people that would get one. There may be 4 or 5 individuals on Misfits that would get one, and KSI himself might have an issue. And that may be one of the sticking points that you're not going to get from KSI and Mams Taylor, which again, I understand because they're pushing their narrative just like Jake has pushed his for about 2 to 3 years now. But I've heard from Jake even talking about a Floyd Mayweather fight that he wants that to be a pro-sanctioned bout. So it is a little bit of a concern when you're talking about why Jake would be hesitant to sign on to fight KSI right now this quickly without ironing out all of those things in contract dispute. And that's why I say the fight's not going to happen, at least not right now, because with what Jake wants to do in the Tommy Fury fight, even if I don't agree with it, even if I say yes, KSI is right to say Jake should fight him next, he's absolutely right to say it, but Jake's going to do what Jake wants to do, and he wants to go and fight Tommy Fury first, which arguably in my opinion is a harder fight for him. But that alone should tell you that Jake is in no way scared of KSI, just like again, KSI was in no way scared of Jake. 100% a reflection of the pro boxing scene in influencer form. We are getting a taste of our own medicine. For those that have not watched boxing, you are getting a taste of what all of us have experienced for years and years now. The biggest fights that we could potentially make, always falling through because of timing, ego, or control. And those 3 things are happening once again here, and I'm just sick of. So who's to blame for this whole thing? Really, nobody and everybody. Yes, you could point the finger at Jake and say, now is the opportunity. This is the moment. And the fact that Jake's not taking it, he's to blame. But I don't know if that's the full truth, because Jake just did almost 1 million pay-per-views with Tommy Fury. The money is there. He feels he's going to be competitive in the rematch, and if he feels that way, he's going to go and fight him. It's not my decision, it's not your decision. So the rematch is probably going to happen, and I'm starting to think even after that, we may not get the KSI fight due to the Floyd Mayweather shenanigans and Jake seeing that as a potential opportunity to make a little more money. So while Mams Taylor and KSI are truthful in saying that they have offered Jake 2 contracts, they are fibbing a little bit by saying Jake is ducking. It's not the case. And while Jake for the longest time was right in saying KSI was the main reason that that fight with Jake didn't happen, he's also fibbing into saying, 1, he would have fought him for free, and 2, that it is now only KSI that is holding up that fight from being made. That's not the truth either. It's both sides going, as KSI said, in that Twitter space back and forth. That's making us feel like every Floyd Mayweather asset and that we all are starting to just lose interest. And maybe that's just me, but I've seen this story before. It's happened in boxing for years. Most recently, Tyson Fury and Anthony Joshua gave us this dose of medicine over and over and over until finally we woke up and realized we're not sick anymore. We're just sick of this. I know that KSI and Jake is not happening next, but I don't know if it's even happening at all. So I'll leave it to you guys. What do you think? Is this KSI's team's fault? Is it Jake's team's fault? Is it a combination of both? Or do you really even care anymore? Because I'm actually starting to question whether I do. Is Jake and KSI happening? No, not yet. Will it ever? I don't have those answers. Hopefully both sides, by the end of the year, the original date, December 16th, can come to their senses and just say yes. But I guess we'll find out.